Okay, so it's me, Martin Crossy's Corner, and I'm here with the amazing Matt Smith, the Chief Executive Officer of FISA. Is that the correct description, Matt?
Executive Director is what I'm called.
Executive Director of FISA, and it looks very exotic behind you where you are now with those palm trees. Can you just explain to the rowing community whereabouts you are in the world?
Yeah. I live in Rome, except Monday to Thursday when I'm in the office in Lausanne. But during lockdown, of course, I've been with my family in Rome, and we have an apartment over here in Sabaudia, which is about an hour and a half south of Rome. And so we weekend here where possible, and you're looking at my backyard.
The backyard looks sensational. And of course, for those that might not know, Sabaudia is one of the World Cup locations for this year, which never happened, and I gather for next year as well.
Sabaudia is the national training site for the Italian team. It was created in 1958 in preparation for the 1960 Olympic Games, and the Italian Navy was the eight. And so there's this beautiful lake here, and they have spent the money to renovate everything, and they were all ready for the regatta in 2020, the first World Cup in 2020. But if you saw on the calendar announcement the other day, they will have World Cup number 3 in 2021.
So it'll be right on your backyard.
That's right.
Now, Matt, one of the things that happened during this crazy topsy-turvy year is that sport began to unravel and the season fall apart. And you were in charge of World Rowing when all that began to happen. And I just wonder, from a personal view, what was that like, running an international federation with so much uncertainty and doubt and things beginning to fall apart around you almost?
Well, I would say the first wave, there were 2 key waves. The first wave was what to do about the 2020 season. And it started with Korea, with our Asia and Oceania qualification regatta in Cheonju, which we had to cancel when the flights were stopped going into Korea, and all of the medical professionals were were having to work in hospitals. And people were basically scared. Then it, of course, blew up in Italy, and particularly in Lombardia, where Varese and Gavirate are located in the north. And it was very clear that things weren't going to unfold in Italy. So we canceled the World Cup 1, World Cup 2, European qualification regatta, and final Paralympic qualification regatta. And then it hit Switzerland. So we had to cancel Lucerne because you couldn't have gatherings of more than X people, and they couldn't go out and do the work, similar to the Henley situation. And then, of course, Poznan was the Europeans, which were postponed. The hardest, then we were lucky. We had a solidarity move where Bagnolas agreed to move the Masters from 21 to 25, and Linz could take up 21 instead of 20. And then the coastal event in Portugal, we hadn't yet attributed the 21, so we were able to move Portugal to 21 from 20. But the most difficult one actually was Bled, because it was very complicated, and to have a summer tourist resort destination locked down with enough hotel rooms to handle the combined championships, it was very tough. And when it was clear that travel probably would not happen, we did a survey, and that international intercontinental travel would not open up. It was very clear the financial model of the organizing committee was broken then, and we agreed that it had to be canceled. A lot of money was lost by the Slovenian Rowing Federation. They're really struggling. FISA and many national federations. Particularly national federations outside of Europe that had booked acclimatization camps in Bled, they lost 20% of the bookings. So we had some really difficult decisions there.
What was it like for you? I mean, was every day waking up to some sort of bad news you had to deal with? I mean, how did you, because you were, presumably living through your own version of lockdown. I know, that you stayed in your apartment in Italy for a very long time without going out. So personally, what was it like?
Well, the beginning of this was we were still in the office. And so we were gathering each day with the staff and collecting the information. We had bi-weekly calls with all the organizing committees to check with them. As everything came together step by step, we were moving toward decisions. We had the FISA Executive Committee meeting 3 times a week, each evening virtually on phone calls, conference calls. And then on March 12th, the lockdown started, and the office closed and everyone had to stay home. I saw on my computer that EasyJet had canceled the flight before it was announced. So I went to Alitalia, booked a flight for 100 euros. And the next day it was 500 euros because it was already social distancing on the flight and about 25 people in a jet with 130 seats. So I got out just before everything really shut down. And then, of course, nearly 3 months lockdown in Rome. The first 2 months not stepping outside except to take the garbage out, I think, twice. My wife did the shopping to go to the supermarket and queue, and it took her 3 hours with the queues.
Wow.
So it was interesting. But we had bi-weekly staff meetings to review everything and use everyone's brain possible because it was touching every area. And it's been one of the most challenging, probably the most challenging period of my career, trying to manage all this virtually and from distance.
Yeah, and I gather people won't know, but we were talking earlier. You've got a 5 a.m. FISA council meeting tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so we of course don't have physical meetings, and when you have a global organization, we have Auckland, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Algeria, UAE, right through to New York, Buenos Aires, and Vancouver. So we have 22 members spread everywhere. So we agreed on 3 Saturdays, 3 hours each. And the first one was 5 a.m. Central European time. Poor Gwyn Batten had to do 4 a.m. From the UK. And the next one was 1 p.m. CET, which was difficult for the others. And then tomorrow morning will be 5 a.m. CET for 3 hours to conclude. So it's interesting times. And we have the meetings of all of our committees and global. And so we're always adjusting times to adapt. So a global organization is struggling to do that.
I mean, just what has it meant for FISA financially for this year? Because you talked about for the World Championships in Bled that FISA's lost some money, and I know without the Olympic money for this year, what has that meant for FISA financially?
Well, it's very concerning. Without the Olympic money to deliver all of the Olympic-related things that we have to do, the qualification events, the World Cups, the development camps, we're facing a cash flow situation for next year without the Olympic money coming in, because that was unintended consequences that we had to do all of the Olympic activities next year pre-Tokyo. We have been lucky. We will get an advance from the IOC to help us finance all of these activities. We had a reserve of approximately 1 year's budget, but if you follow the stock market, you can see that we lost 15 to 20% on our asset management during this crisis. So that sucked up some of our reserve. But we've done everything possible. The staff is at 50%. We're benefiting from a Swiss government program for 6 months. Everyone's working. Everyone's theoretically working 50%, and 50% is being reimbursed by the Swiss government. I can tell you we're working 150%.
Yeah.
But anyway, I better not let that go outside. No. And so we're doing everything possible to reserve as much cash as we can to get through next year through to the Olympics.
And is it right that the European Championships are still sort of scheduled for this year, and there's a possibility they might be held?
Yes, we felt that in a continent it was possible that things could clear up enough that a continental event could happen. And for Europe, we couldn't postpone the European Under 23, and we just recently announced it would happen in Duisburg at the beginning of September. The European Juniors will be kind of end September in Belgrade. We just announced that. And on July 31st is our drop dead date to announce whether the European Championships will happen in Poznan in October.
Do you get a sense of how likely that might be from where you are, Matt, in terms of who you're talking to and what people are saying?
Yeah, we have, I don't know if you've seen on the website, the Back to Regattas, where we are listing all of the things an organizing committee has to do to deliver an event in COVID, post-COVID, social distancing, masks, health checks, etc. So we've talked to the organizing committees, and they estimate approximately 20,000 euros extra costs to, have social distancing in buses at the venue, have enough distance, have enough time, so that there's not gatherings of more than X 100 people, et cetera, et cetera. So, and we don't know if this is all going to sort out in 21. With asymptomatic people in their 20s and 30s, which it's seeming like the COVID carriers in their 20s and 30s don't show symptoms. It could be that the events in 21 will also have to have masks, social distancing, disinfection devices, 3 times the size of the dining areas, et cetera, et cetera. So we're experimenting with these in Duisburg, Belgrade, and Poznan because we might have to face that until there's a vaccination for COVID.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you have, I was talking to Lucy Stephan, who's the stroke of the Australian 4 earlier today, and just asking her about, what does she think about the likelihood of the Olympics going ahead next year? And she said from her training, she absolutely 100% wanted to believe that the Olympics was going to happen. From where you sit now, I mean, how likely is it that we will have the Olympic Games running in 2021?
So too hard from me sitting here in Europe to speculate on that. I had 2 conference calls today with Tokyo and the IOC. It's a question of budget as much as the status of the health situation in the world. I mean, looking at how it's going crazy in Brazil and the United States and India and Iran, it could be an Olympics that it has a limited participation to countries that have properly cleared the situation. It's costing a ton of money to delay by 1 year all the activities, and we're going through another budget exercise to see where we can cut things that don't touch athletes. And you can read about that in the media since the last 2 days, that the rumors are going out on how they're going to try to limit spectators, limit costs everywhere they can. So it's hard to say, but in every meeting I'm having with the IOC and with Tokyo, everything's going full steam ahead.
Can you see, is there a sense that the Olympics might happen without spectators? So with just, the 10,000 or so, or maybe less than that, athletes, and maybe just the Japanese there as spectators?
We are anticipating Duisburg, Belgrade, and Poznan without spectators because the cost to, have them fill out the forms, the declaration forms of if they have any symptoms, have they experienced COVID, blah, 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 the temperature measurement, the social distancing, all of the things. It's going to be the case where we have these events without spectators, probably.
Oh, wow.
And I would say, yeah.
And I guess that would be the case possibly for events in 2021 or as well.
I mean, it depends on which expert you listen to who says that the vaccine will come through by the end of the year. Yeah, it's too early to say, but we are preparing for that to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost unimaginable, I think, to speculate what it would be like for the world's rowers, now preparing for the Olympics if they don't happen, and just, what some of them have gone through. But I guess, that's something that you're having to hold on your shoulders,
Fortunately, the decision is much higher up than me, so I can't. I'm not letting that particular point keep me up at night. But yeah, it's going to be a very, very tough year, having World Championships and Olympics and everything crammed into 2021. I need my full team, to be able to pull off all these events. So we're really trying to avoid staff reductions. On the budget side, FISA has always been very, very prudent on budget. We don't have speculative money in our budgeting. So I would say, and we don't have a big commercial element to our budget. So we're fortunate to be not in such a crisis as many other sports, professional sports, and let's say more commercial sport federations.
Yeah,
but it's going to be a heck of a year next year.
That's a great blessing to know that, Matt. But one thing that I hadn't thought of is, of course, the World Championships are next year in Shanghai, and I guess going to be subject to similar restrictions as to whatever the shape the Olympic Games are going to take.
Yeah, we'll be in October, so hopefully world will be in a better situation, but we're optimistic, and Shanghai is going to do a fantastic job. They have the people that work on Formula One, the people who work on ATP, all those people are working on rowing, and it's going to be a fantastic event.
It's a real opportunity. I mean, I know you've been looking at that as a real opportunity to showcase our sport in, not just Shanghai, but, Southeast Asia and wider afield.
That's correct. It was a part of our strategy to help expand the sport. We have a rower as kind of number 2 in the sport ministry in China, an old buddy of mine from 30 years. He is also the president of the Rowing Federation, and he's going crazy to promote rowing in China. He's the coach of the double that got the silver medal in Atlanta, if you recall.
Wow.
And he's now right-hand guy to the Minister of Sport, who has no sport experience, by the way. So he's got a lot of say in what happens in China. And so we're doing a lot. And Shanghai is just fantastic to work with. What an exciting city. To me, the most exciting city in the world right now.
Wow, I've never been there, and I'm really excited to be able to go and to see rowing there. One of our viewers, Daniel Spring, who goes under the name of Fat Sculler on Twitter, he's asked, will the 2021 World Championships run a full program, or will it just run the international events?
Okay, I see the comments now.
Yeah.
It's the full Senior World Championship program.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I think.
And
did you want to say?
I was going to say, part of the deal is that it's a different event than they bid for, because they bid for a year where there weren't going to be Olympics, of course. So we had some difficult talks with them. But if you're going to go for Paris after Tokyo, you're not going to take a year off. This year was your year off.
Yeah.
So, and we feel that the Paris 2024 people need that platform to start off the road to Paris. And so we expect, in the comments we've had with the national federations, is yes, to get our sport ministry grant for next year, we've got to have a performance of those people in Shanghai, et cetera, et cetera. So we think that it works. It's not ideal. For those who are going to compete in Tokyo, hopefully they'll get 1 or 2 weeks holiday to get to know their families again and whatever, but they'll probably be jumping back in boats to, start on the journey to Paris.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Matt. One thing I kind of wanted to turn to was with rowing and the Olympic program, had quite a lot of questions. Asked people, you know, who knew that I was going to chat to you, and they asked a lot about rowing's status in the Olympic program. So I guess first of all, you know, we've got the 2024 Olympics and so much talk about coastal rowing. Can we look at that first of all? You know, what are the future of lightweights in the Olympic program, and what's the future of coastal rowing in the Olympic program? Sorry.
First of all, you need to know that we are the fourth or fifth most popular television sport of the Olympic Games.
Wow.
So the broadcasters and particularly the big broadcasters are really positive about rowing when we speak to them and to OBS. It's one of the most attractive sports to watch televisually instead of an indoor event or something. So as television rights is, you know, one of the key elements of the financial model of the Olympic Games, there's no question that there's a big interest in rowing. So that starts. We've been, you know, we lightweights went in, you know very well. Lightweights went in Atlanta after the decision in 1993. I was there to watch Martin Cross cross the line in 1984 in Los Angeles at Lake Casitas, everyone. And I just spent the day with Richard Budgett on conference calls about Tokyo, who's the IOC medical director, who was Martin's boatmate and winning the gold medal in 1984. And I'm from Los Angeles, so I was a part of the U.S. team management in 1984. So I don't know how many people remember this ancient history about your gold medal, Martin, but I thought I'd throw that in.
Thank you. That's really kind of you, Matt. Yeah.
So yes, coming to the more difficult question is the IOC has been quite clear that a separate weight category was not consistent among the sports. And they had a lot of complaints and criticisms that our rowing inside people were manipulating the program, and that why does rowing get this additional category when this X sport, Y sport, etc. doesn't? And they are really trying to be consistent with the different sports. So this pressure has been on for a while. With Samaranch, it was about universality in the 80s and 90s, and it's slowly shifted. So President Bach is very clear, and we will not be allowed to have a separate weight category of our sport. However, they are open to sports with low cost, with using existing venues and gender equality to add value to the Olympic program. And so that's why our proactive positioning is that coastal rowing will add value to the Games. Olympic broadcast services are really positive about rowing and about coastal rowing. And so that's really important that the television team is positive about coastal rowing. And it will be a decision of the national federations, the member federations, on October 18th on our virtual extraordinary Congress, that we propose an Olympic program that we believe will be successful and will get approval by the IOC when they decide now in December 2020 for Paris 2024.
And as yet, you don't know whether it'll be beach sprint rowing or the coastal rowing variant that you propose in that program.
We are keeping all options open, both options open. It would have to be at the sailing venue in Marseille. We are not allowed to go to Tahiti. They're to minimize the carbon footprint. They're going to just minimize as much as they can everyone who's going to fly over to Tahiti. There's a great place to do coastal rowing in Tahiti at the surfing venue, but no, it will have to be in Marseille if it happens. And we're keeping all options open because we're not sure if OBS prefers endurance style or beach sprint style.
Yeah. Quite famously, for those involved in rowing in the 2018 championship, President Bach came to Plovdiv, where the championships were being held, and kind of, in one context, gave a talking to rowing's leaders about the type of sports that were holding young people's attention and how favourably or unfavourably rowing stacked up in that point of view. I just wonder, from your perspective, following his comments there, is there a sense that rowing might need to change even more to be included, to keep its inclusion in the Olympic movement, to have some kind of shorter, more attractive sport to people that hold, less attention than 6 minutes over 2,000 meters? Or is that not a worry?
No, that's never been mentioned to us. The worry for us is that we have to stop being so far outside of the city and be a little more flexible. And the first test of this will be Los Angeles 2028. And we're studying, currently they had to bid with a proper lake with a proper course, 2,000 meters, 8 lanes, etc. And Lake Casitas was no longer viable because the water level was not reliable. So the bid was for a reservoir called Lake Paris, which is about 2 hours outside of LA near Riverside. It technically met the technical standards. It's out in the bush. More cacti would be watching than bodies, humans. But what we've been working on is the 1932 Olympic course in Long Beach, which where the regatta was held in 1932. It is tidal. It has a bridge at 500 meters and several other, compromises that would have to be made. So he was very clear that the sports in the games need as much as possible to be near the heart of the games, because that's what it's about. So you'll be hearing more about our analysis of the fairness of the water with tide and what distance we can do and things like that coming up. The COVID lockdown has slowed things down in Los Angeles. They can't get back into their offices until September.
Wow.
So they will be like 6 months lockdown in Los Angeles. But we're in contact with them, and we hope to, after September, be able to make some progress about what's going to happen in 2028.
Is there a sense of a distance that, that rowing won't go beneath? If there's, say, an attractive city centre location of 1,000 meters, say, for example, in a future Olympic venue, would rowing consider that, or is rowing saying no, beyond this particular distance, that's the shortest we'll race over?
For the Olympics, the Sports Medicine Commission and the Competitive Commission have made an analysis, and we really strongly believe the sport should stay an endurance sport, whatever it's called, strength endurance sport. They have a term, and they believe it shouldn't go less than 5 minutes to touch all of these elements of endurance and strength that we have in the sport. So we will dig our heels in to try to keep it at least at 5 minutes. Most of its boat classes at 5 minutes. So basically, I'm saying that less than 1,500 doesn't reach that level. For other multi-sport games where we have very little say in what's the process, like the Youth Olympic Games, you know that in Singapore we had to go to 1,000 meters because we had to go on Marina Bay there. Except in Buenos Aires, the only place the only place we could go was Puerto Madero, which was a 500-meter event. But we consider these outliers. For the Olympics, it's 5 minutes is the minimum we're targeting.
Matt, Phil Lubicic, who's on this view, has asked, do you ever see indoor rowing playing a part in the Olympic program?
Hi, Philip. We miss you, by the way. He's moved to somewhere else, some other sport. If you allow me to respond, that indoor. Let's start with indoor rowing and what we've just experienced the last couple of months. The other sports in Lausanne are really jealous of rowing because we have the indoor rower. It's fantastic, and what is happening with the virtual indoor rowing racing is amazing. I've been following it in Italy in lockdown, and every Saturday they have these dynamic commentators, Luca and some others, and they have interviews and races, and it's we see a really big future for indoor rowing. It's in the World Urban Games. It was in the World Games. I don't see it in the Olympic program because I think the Olympics are going to go through another budget and complexity crisis when cities don't have as much money to do things. So the answer to your question is I don't see that playing out, but it's a huge advantage for our sport, what we've been experiencing and how we do it.
If not, do you see it ever being part of the World Championships, or always being a completely separate event to the World Championships?
Well, we think the right approach, the right strategy is that this is a way to reach diverse and different, populations of rowers who maybe aren't near the water. So we're happy that it's in a different part of the year, different part of the season, where it has its own status and its own value. We do see, going back to physical indoor world championships next in 2022, you know that we are working out a scheme for 2021 where it's completely virtual. But we're trying to integrate virtual categories in this program of the Indoor Champs going forward, so that we really maximize the diversity and the reach of all kinds of rowers who aren't always water rowers.
Yeah, that sounds a great shout. Somebody asked me, Matt, it might not be a question you're particularly comfortable in answering, or just straight off without any preparation. But if you were,
it's unusual that you would ask an uncomfortable question. So, how long have we known each other? More than 30 years, I think.
That's fair enough. It was a speculation that if you were perhaps in another life. I know you've been with FISA for a long time, but found yourself as head of the IOC. What would you look to change or develop?
Next question, please. No. Martin, you need to give me a little time on such a question.
I know. I think that's probably fair enough.
But really, it's the phenomena of our lifetimes, of the 20th and 21st century. The gathering of all of the countries, the peaceful participation, the way we've been riding the golden wave of financing for sport, of interest in sport, of television for sport. It's hard for me to criticize what they've created because it's just phenomenal. I would feel uncomfortable and out of place suggesting that I had better ideas than they did of how it's going on, but it is just. I can't think of another event, sporting or otherwise, in the world that has the standard and the level that they do and the following that they do. So that's how I can respond to you.
That's a great shout, Matt. One of the things, sometimes it almost seems like rowing, occasionally leads the IOC in terms of what it's doing. I'm not sure if that's the correct interpretation, but my mind springs back to 2016 and the doping crisis with the McLaren report and the Russian team, where FISA chose to take a very firm and perhaps world-leading stance in what it was doing within the sport. And you were very much involved in those decisions.
Yeah, sorry, I had some alert come into my computer. I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Yeah, I guess I was asking you to talk about, what went on in 2016 with the doping, the call about the McLaren report and the Russian team and doping, because FISA, in that sense, it seemed to me, I'm not sure if this is the correct interpretation, was pretty much leading the world in terms of how tough it was going to be for violations of doping.
Yeah, if you allow me to go back a little further in time, there was a situation in 2007 where we caught the Russian team infusing creatine and non-medical substances, which was against the World Anti-Doping Code. And we discovered the materials in a garbage can outside their hotel in Lucerne. And we were able to successfully prosecute using DNA. So we got the DNA off the blood remains on the infusion devices. We then blood tested everyone on the Russian squad, and we identified, I believe it was 9 Russian rowers we could identify from their blood remains on the infusion devices. and we threw out I think nearly all their boats from the Beijing Olympic Games based on non-authorized use. I mean, sticking needles into your veins for infusing creatine, and it's just crazy stuff. So I have a history of not being very welcome in Russia. But in 2016, yes, it was a couple weeks to go. And we, FISA, we just don't want doping in our sport, and we do everything we can to avoid it. And we didn't, let's say we did what we thought was correct and right, and responded to the IOC's request, and we don't regret. And it turned out that the position we took was pretty strong. Only 5 actually were still eligible to compete. There were many of them who were absolutely clean, and I'm sorry that it affected them, but they are part of that country and a part of that system, and it's what it was. And I spent the first 3 days in Brazil in court, in hotel courtroom, fighting against their lawyers to try to overturn our positions. We won 2 and lost 1. But at the end of the day, they had only a 4 made up of 3 starboard guys and 1 port guy. So one guy had to change side, and it was very sad. I know a lot of Russian rowers personally, and so I'm really sorry, and know that we're not touched. Funny one is that on my flight to Rio, I had a stopover in Lisbon, and so guess who gets on the plane? The Russian team and Mike Spracklin. So I was a little bit covering down in my seat, and then I thought, hey, I just did my job. If they abuse me, then they have to face the consequences. So I sat up again, and but I was walking in the Rio airport behind Mike Spracklin because he was sitting ahead of me, and he just went to the restroom. Well, I was going to catch him, and I turned left, and so I didn't meet him there, but I met him at an entrance to the venue one day, and he wasn't very happy with me, but that's life. Yeah. So yes, it was quite interesting.
Yeah. Something else, perhaps maybe a little bit more current, is the.
Sorry, 1 second. I have a interruption on my. Okay. Just a second. Got to clear.
Should I answer?
Cancel.
Or I answer and
cancel. Okay, I'm back. I have my Bluetooth on with my phone as well, so excuse me. We can restart now.
Thanks, Matt. I was wondering.
Take the Bluetooth away of the phone here.
In terms of something maybe a little more current with the Black Lives Matter movement and diversity, which I know has been something, close to your heart because you were in charge of development before you became executive director of FISA. What view have you taken on this? I know FISA have put out a statement, but we're quite a white-dominated sport in most countries, I guess.
Yeah, just a few things is, that we're pursuing coastal and indoor rowing as one of the ways to diversify our sport. It's critical that we diversify our sport. And we are, in fact, tomorrow morning going to decide to create a diversity and inclusivity commission, mainly to share models of clubs and national federations of what they're doing to be more inclusive and more diverse. So we see it, we understand it, and it's critical that we make steps forward. The other day, we had a staff Zoom call with Anita de France, which was fantastic, and we asked some difficult questions, and she shared with us some very difficult stories from her life as a African-American female in the sport of rowing and in the world, in the Olympic movement and the sport. And if you haven't read her book, it's a really interesting read. We're so proud. I'm so proud to know her and be a part of her life since 1983 since 1978.
What is the book called?
If you put Anita de France into Amazon, you'll find it.
Okay.
Olympic Memories, Olympic Story, or something like that. Very highly recommended. Really amazing person and amazing life story. And she is doing really well, Martin. She spent all 3 days on our last Los Angeles 2028 site visit. Lucid, fantastic. Lost a lot of weight. Looks great, and she's just back to the Anita we knew from the 80s and 90s. So I'm really happy about that. On the political point, you know that FISA has a long history of trying to be apolitical. Tommy Keller did not allow national anthems and national flags at our victory ceremonies, and we did everything to stay as much as we could away from politics. So each time we kind of get close to that gray area, that zone, we really discuss it. Is it appropriate for FISA? Do we have the resources? And we have reinforced, and you'll see in our Extraordinary Congress proposals, we've reinforced our principles of rowing and of FISA. So that's my response to your question. Making tweets and statements, we want to we want to do the right thing, and that's by doing actions. So we're rather hesitant always to make comments and statements right away, but watch our actions to see what we do. We feel that that's the best way to get to the end of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's a really interesting status. So just Christopher Anton is on this viewing, has asked a question about if Los Angeles goes to a shorter distance, will that have implication for the 2027 World Championship?
Yeah, we're very clear about this, that we're not going to let one event decide and change our sport. And so everything will be 2,000 meters except the Olympic regatta if we're in Long Beach. So we discussed that a lot, and we know that it could be that someone is better at 2,000 than 1,500 and will have a better result at the World Champs, but we believe it's the right thing to do. Stay with our sport as we designed it, and only alter it on the one-off occasion. I see we have the My Olympic Life. Thank you, Ludlam and Johnny Ambrose.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. Matt, I was going to ask about rowing and sponsorship, because one of the things FISA used to have, would it be called a title sponsor? And I know FISA has made great moves in terms of the image of sport, as with the Worldwide Fund for Nature and Clean Water, specifically to in part to attract commercial partners. How has that been going? What are the likelihood of anything
bad? I can tell you, and all the other international federations, we meet regularly and discuss it. It's terrible right now. The reputation of doping and the Russian crisis, the reputation of all the corruption scandals in international sport, it's just terrible. And consolidation in the industries. We, as an international product package, it's very, very difficult. We're too small. Advertising has totally changed with the internet and social media. It's much cheaper to advertise and to reach your targeted audience this way. So it's really, really a difficult time. We tried, our communities, we tried to really push the clean water approach because it's really a credible environmental element of our sport. And what we found, and we had really discussions with CEOs at the CEO level, particularly with the Interpublic Group, IPG, Interpublic Group of companies, and there was confusion between is it consumer is it sport or is it environment, and it was very confusing. So we pulled back, and it's WWF driving it and trying to convince their partners and sponsors to help finance and the main thing is to finance the center in Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
Zimbabwe. But it's a very difficult time, and it's not rowing. It's all sport, all international federations, and it's almost each day in the media. The weightlifting federation is the president of the track and field athletics federation. We're really struggling.
So in that sense, what's the future for rowing like? I mean, you mentioned your hopes for 2021 and a great showcase to happen in Shanghai, God willing. What does the future for rowing look like in terms of, it's an expensive sport to run, and particularly with the changes that, you've tried to introduce successfully with the TV coverage, these all cost money.
Yeah. So number one is what the world is going to look like post-COVID. And we're talking to different experts and reading everything we can to see what corporations and companies and potential sponsors are going to have, what resources they'll have for sponsorship of sport. Governments, what are they going to be able to contribute to sport events and sport teams? And it's not particularly positive. I'm sorry about that. The Shanghai initiative is also an attempt to touch the Chinese market, where you have to have events in China to touch Chinese companies, Chinese sponsors. And so it's allowed us to get much closer to possible Chinese sponsors. And that's going. We're getting in the door. We're getting into discussions with major global Chinese companies. Europe is in not the best of shape, and financially and economically, and so a European-based company, they're not doing title sponsorships and presenting sponsorships very often anymore, except for maybe football and soccer.
Yeah.
For the future, we have lots of other ways to finance things, and we will continue with our sport as a sport and not a commercial product that changes its rules to be more attractive, but change a fundamental of the sport. But we'll see how this all plays out. We're rather positive because we have a partnership with the Shanghai City Sport Administration on sponsorships, and so we have some fantastic marketing people in Shanghai working to get sponsors for rowing.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's great to hear that there is hope in terms of, for the future of the sport. I wonder, looking back, Matt, you've been involved in so many things that FISA has done, or so many changes. Are there any that you look back on and you're particularly proud of having been a part of? And you think that was something that I can really, see as adding legacy to the sport?
Yeah, for those who don't know, I've worked for FISA since 1992, volunteered since 1986 to FISA, and have been executive director since 1995. One of the first jobs that John Boltby gave me, my predecessor as Secretary General, Executive Director of FISA, was to look after the para rowing in 1995. So I dug into that, and I'm really proud and feel that my contribution was pretty, substantial to get into the Paralympic Games and to develop Paralympic rowing, and was recognized by the IPC when I was made chair of the Paralympic Games Committee of the IPC for the past few games. So I'm proud of that. What I did want to say, Martin, is the second wave of the COVID was the change of the 2021 season. So you probably, with the postponement of the Olympic Games and rescheduling in the slot 1 year later, it meant we had to change all of our events, change the dates of all of our events. And it was a huge job, because the organizing committees had to go to the government authorities and see if this date would work. Oh, there's a big exhibition in town on that weekend. We can't do that one, blah, blah, blah. Do we still have the funding for next year? And during lockdown, it wasn't so easy to get answers from the government. And so that's why 2 days ago, we released finally the 2021 program. We had only one change in venue, and that was Trakai, Lithuania. The government wouldn't guarantee the money at this time for next year because of COVID considerations. And the money that had been reserved for Sabadia 2020 they were able to shift it to 21, and so we could slot in Sabadia to replace Track I. So that was a big exercise to move all of our events, and that was some more gray hairs to get that all ready and get that out there. So I'm happy that that's now done. I don't exclude that in 22, 23, and 24, we'll have some issues with government financing of some of our events, and there might have to be some changes.
Yeah. Along the lines of less events, I mean, would there still be the 3 World Cup events, or would other FISA events suffer?
I'm going through the budget line by line now with our news from the IOC and our expectations, and I don't see. I see us financially stable enough to continue to 24 with our current standard of living with the events that we have. We will trim some things here and there because post-COVID income will be slightly less or less. And we hope our reserve recovers from the market crash. But I don't, at this point, I don't see that we will have a massive change in our style, our standard of living in rowing and our events.
Right, just one thing that occurs, will there still be, if lightweights disappear from the Olympics in 24, what is the place for lightweights in the World Championship program?
That is a very good question because it's the national federations who have to finance the non-Olympic events, teams that travel to international sport, international regattas, and the World Championships. We are analyzing the entries from 2018, 2019 after the World Championship program was made gender equal. And the lightweight pairs aren't heavily entered, and we know that the national federations have to find that money themselves. They're not getting it from the sport ministry or their Olympic committee. As far as we're concerned, lightweight rowing is a vital and key part of our sport. Lightweight boats are a key part of most continental championships, Asia, Americas, Africa. They are at the university level, at the club level. It's a hugely participating event. And we anticipate offering lightweight events at the world level. It's just we know how difficult it is to find the money when you have to raise it yourself to get yourself there.
Yeah. That's really interesting. With all these issues to try and solve and try and find a route through, and you mentioned trying to, with a smaller team, trying to battle your way through to making a 2021 program. What is it that keeps you involved, keeps you motivated about the sport of rowing? What is it you love about the sport of rowing? How come you have this, this drive, this determination? I mean, I know it's your job, but I would sense it goes deeper than that, knowing you.
Yeah, so I started rowing like most Americans at university. A tall, skinny guy came knocking at my door at the dorm saying, "Do you want to come down and try rowing?" Because I'm 6'4" or 194, of course, I was getting some letters. So I went down to Marina del Rey in Los Angeles, where UCLA rowed, and was hooked the first day. I loved it. And my problem was, and I made the varsity boat in my sophomore year, my second year, but then I herniated a disc, and this is 1978, and there was not microsurgery in 1978. So I had to take a year off and do a lot of swimming. I came back for 2 more years and made it through and finished my university career. But my back couldn't row international level for sure. I kept having spasms and problems. So I became a young coach. But like all of us, it changed my life. Rowing changed my life, and it's just fantastic. So as a young coach, if you permit me to say a few words, there was no coaching education program in the United States back in the early 80s. So I wanted to learn from the best coach who I could. And we had hired Chris Korzanowski to be our Olympic coach. And he said, "Oh, you have to go see Tor Nielsen and Pidi Luco." And so I got a job. I met him got a job, moved to Italy, moved to Pidiluco. For the old ones in the audience, you'll know that that's the Italian National Center. And I lived there 3 years working for Tor and learning from Tor. And that's when I worked out my strengths weren't particularly in coaching, but perhaps management administration. I had an MBA from UCLA, and that's how I got into the jobs that I have now. So I want to give back. When you're coaching, you feel it day to day, each day, when you see the eyes and the development of the athletes, which I loved. But I can feel that the things we do at FISA, when we get down to the development program, to the areas and touching the lives of individual athletes, then I feel good that we're doing the right thing for our sport. And if you allow me to say, the people in our sport are just fantastic. We all know. And in the FISA governance group with Tricia Smith, for example, president of the Canadian NOC, fantastic. Jean-Christophe Roland, the president, is just fantastic guy. They're all rowers. They're all rowers around the council. Garrett Jan Eggenkamp, the new treasurer, fantastic. We talk about sport. It's about rowing and what can we do for rowers. So if you have any doubts about FISA and those guys with the blue blazers, they're rowers. They're rowers. And Jean-Christophe every morning is on his erg. I'm on my erg or the watt bike every morning. I've had some shoulder problems, so it's more watt bike. But nearly all of us are doing training every day. The gym at the hotel where the meeting is always packed in the morning. So just know we have it's in our blood, and we're there with you.
Yeah, I must say I get a sense of that very much, though, Matt. I just wonder, how long can you carry on for?
Yes, I'm not young. I'm currently 61, and definitely looking forward to slowing down a bit. We worked out that this is my first summer in 35, 40 years without every other weekend going to a regatta and being away. So I'm hoping to take a proper summer vacation and just not get in an airplane and not get in a hotel, and try to have some good time with the family. But we'll be back in the driver's seat for 21 and trying to make the events happen as best as we can. We have a fantastic staff team. I'm really proud of them. They're working like crazy to help everyone, help you, help the sport. Martin is on our commentary team. We're so proud of Martin and the commentators. It's a great environment.
Well, Matt, you've ranged far and wide this afternoon, and I know you're very busy, and you found out about time and hour to spend with us to talk about rowing, and you've been very candid as well. It's been fascinating to hear all the things that from your perspective and what lies ahead.
Martin, we love you. You're our star commentator, and we go way back. So to have an hour talking to you is always a pleasure.
That's great.
And I'm not the Matt Smith of the 2003 boat race. I'm older than that. So there's a lot of Matt Smiths around.
Yeah, I'm going to leave those questions because I think you can go and have a well-earned. Have you got a drink waiting for you there on the veranda?
I've got an IOC Tokyo issue that I have to deal with next. We have more budget cuts in the non-athlete area. We're working through. We're working on a lot of different things. One of my staff members, Natalie, moved to Tokyo to step in to solve a personnel problem there and is our competition manager. And she has agreed to continue for another year.
Wow.
Alone in a little Tokyo apartment to run the team there. Fantastic team, working like crazy. And we have an issue with Richard Budget that I'm working on with the IOC and with Tokyo that will be next up after this call. And then 5 o'clock tomorrow morning for the council meeting. Yeah. So we're having fun.
Good luck, Matt. It's been fantastic to spend some time with you. I can't thank you enough, and can't wish you well enough either. Thank you ever so much.
And I'm really happy you're feeling better, Martin. We love you, and keep going strong. And I'm really looking forward to Crossy's Corner and hearing you comment at our events.
Thank you. That's great, Matt.
You're a star.
Bye for now.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Really nice talking to you, and hope it wasn't too boring. See you later.
It wasn't.